We are talking about picking a name today, and you might be thinking, why am I talking about this? It's not that big of a deal. It actually is a huge deal, and I realized this after I was mentoring people, and I see so many people get stuck on this step. They couldn't decide on a name, they couldn't pick something, and some of them honestly never got past this point. And as a fellow indecisive person, I understand this is a huge deal, so we need to talk about it. Let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome to The Thread. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Kendall. I'm a former mentor for people starting their fashion brands from scratch. I'm a Parsons graduate, and I had my own independent brand for about 7 years. So choosing a name is a big deal, and I get that. And although I can't be there with you in person to hear your name ideas and give my advice, I hopefully will have some tips for you today about exactly some processes you could follow, and then exactly what steps to take once you've picked a name to actually make sure that you can use it. So let's talk about all of these things. First of all, up top, there are basically 3 types of names you can choose. Number 1 is a word or combination of words that doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing in your brand, such as Lululemon, right? I believe that's just a word that they made up. Or Amazon doesn't really have anything to do with what they sell. And then number 2 would be a word or combination of words that does have something to do with what you're doing. And maybe it hopefully conveys an essence or gives the customer some kind of idea of what you do. I think that if you can get it right, this is the best idea to go with, because it just needs less explaining. It's like available in people's minds right away. Think about like Girlfriend Collective. If you don't know the brand Girlfriend Collective or what they do, you can kind of deduce from their name that it has something to do with women. It's probably a women's wear line from the Girlfriend. And then from Collective, it probably has something to do with community or inclusivity or something like that. So I think that's a good name that gives you at least a sense of what the brand might be about. Number 3, of course, is using your personal name. And of course, a lot of people in fashion do this. A lot of the top luxury brands, it's someone's name, the designer. I think that this can be hit or miss. Like it's kind of like you betting on that people will remember your name. People's names are a little bit harder to remember in general. So, it's a bet that you can take if you have a really great name and it's not trademarked, go for it. So those are the 3 types of names. Now, to choose a name, giving an essence or a feel or some word or combination of words that gives a feel of your vibe, your overall vibe. Like my first brand name that I had my brand was called Vesta for the longest time until I stupidly rebranded, but that's for another episode. So Vesta is a planetary object. It's also a Roman goddess. I felt like it kind of gave a cosmic, mystical type of feel, even though people never knew what Vesta was. People would be like, what does Vesta mean? But I felt like it kind of conveyed a little bit of an essence of what I was about and what I wanted my clothing to kind of convey, this romance about it. So I felt that was a good name. Why did I change it? I don't know. But so start to write down all of your ideas, whether you want to use a name or your name or a random word that doesn't mean anything, or you want to use a word or combination of words that does mean something. Start to write everything down. You can ask for feedback. Sometimes somebody will have some wild idea that really works. So get all those down on paper. Once you start to kind of narrow things down, you're going to want to check on the domain name. Very important. So go to whois.com and see if the .com for your name is available. If it's not, I feel like everything in the world's been taken. You could do a .co, although I think a .com is a better idea if you can make it happen. You can always add a word before or after your brand name. Like mine was shopvesta.com. It was super easy to say. I think it was easy to remember. And yeah, I would just make sure that it's not going to be a mouthful for people to say or remember. And then I was also able to get the social media handle available for Shop Vesta on Facebook and Instagram. So that's my next piece of advice. Take my advice here. Get the same name in your domain and social media, exact same name if you can, because when I rebranded, I had a different domain from the social media handle, and it was really annoying telling people, and I felt stupid doing it. I'm like, why did I pick this? And it was, I had to have both things printed on the tags, and it kind of becomes a headache. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it does become a little bit of a headache. So my advice is to really try to get the exact same .com and the exact same social media handle. And it might be hard to find. It might eliminate a ton of names that you want, but you'll be a lot happier when you have something simple that's easy for people to remember. I remember when I wanted to rebrand and change my name, I thought I had all these ideas with the word moon in them, and that was not going to happen. There are so many brands with the word moon in them that it just became impossible. So be sure to check on the domain and the social media handle before getting too far into this. Now, the third step, if you happen to find what you want, yay, you're going to want to check the trademark database. So here in the US, if you just Google US trademark database, you type in your name that you're thinking of, and you need to go through every active listing, every active trademark to make sure that nobody is using your name for a similar brand. So for Vesta, there was a bedding company. There's also like a wine company. There were quite a few Vestas, but there was nobody in fashion. So I felt confident in going forward and being able to use the name. If somebody's doing something in fashion at all, chances are that down the road, if they find out about you, they might send you a cease and desist. You might not be able to operate your business under that name. And of course, you won't be able to trademark that name. So you'll just be operating forever without a trademark. So keep that in mind. And hopefully, between all of those things, you will find something that you love eventually. It might be a long process. So also, on that note, people always ask me, well, should I trademark my name right away? My personal feeling is you don't need to trademark it until you actually get to the launch stage, because when you're just in pre-development or you're just in the idea stage, you sometimes change your mind. I did this at the beginning first. I had my name, my idea was to make a capsule collection. This one was when capsule collections were all the rage, and my name was going to be junocapsule.com. And then, as I was developing further, and it takes a long time to get to launch, sometimes a year and a half, 2 years. When I got a little bit further, I was realizing this was not a good name. First of all, to have the word capsule in here, what if I want to do something that's not a capsule? And secondly, I realized that there was a fashion women's wear brand called Juno that was trademarked. So I'm like, altogether, this was actually a bad idea. So I'm really glad I waited and did not trademark. But I think once you get to actually launching and you're like, yes, this is what I'm going with, I feel good about this all aligns, go ahead and trademark it. Because if you get a few years into business and you haven't trademarked and your brand is going well, you want to keep it, you want to keep the name, and someone comes along with the same business name and they trademark it, you will not be able to use your name anymore. And that will be very sad for you. And possibly all of your SEO and your search optimization will start going to them just because they have the same name. I've heard horror stories like this. So if you're serious about your name, you're serious about your brand, I would trademark it around the launch stage. That's just my opinion. Okay, so let's talk about what makes a name good. First of all, you want it to be memorable. You want to have it stand out against competitors. So this is where some market research comes in handy. If you're doing market research and you notice there's kind of a trend with names of similar brands in this space, What can you do that kind of evokes the same thing but is also memorable and stands out? Number 2, is the word itself or the combination of words appealing and fun to say? Will people like saying it, or is it like an ugly name? I've heard plenty of those before that I'm like, oh, this actually repulses me. I know it means something, but I don't like saying it. Number 3, does it convey an essence or a feeling? Like I said, you don't have to do a name that means something, but if it conveys an essence or a feeling or some type of like image in their mind, I think that's for your benefit. And number 4, is it adaptable for future growth? Like I said, with the capsule name, that was going to restrict me later on, I think. And the same goes for like, you know, if you're using a name like Megan's Colorful Bridal Shop.com or something, and then eventually you want to do not colorful bridal, you want to do white traditional wedding dresses, this is really going to stand in your way, or you're going to have to do a lot of explaining to people. So pick a name that, you know, it's not restricting you too much, and eventually if you do want to change or offer different things, you can do that. Some things to avoid are a name that you have to explain over and over again. This will get really annoying, especially if it's like a weird pronunciation. Like that people just don't get until you tell them, or they're like, what does that mean? You don't want to have to do that, so just avoid that. Also, I think you should avoid trends that are too hot. This isn't as hot anymore, but do you remember a few years ago when the name + name was all over the place, especially on Etsy, especially if it was like a kid's brand and they used their kid's name? People went way overboard. You think I'm going to remember any of those names? No. So no more names with the +. That is my personal opinion. And the last one is to avoid something that might be inappropriate in another language. Okay. That's kind of like, duh, but you want to do thorough research on the name and make sure it doesn't mean something offensive. We all remember when Kylie Jenner named her son something, and then it turned out that that name didn't mean something that you'd want to name a child in another language. If that was true, I don't know, that might have been clickbait, but something like that you want to avoid. So those are all my tips for you guys. I really hope that this helped. I wish I could help you choose a name, and I know how overwhelming it is, and I know what a big deal it is, but I really hope that some of these things helped you. Your homework for today, if I may suggest it, is to kind of get all of your ideas on paper, check the social media, check the domain, check the trademark database, and that will really help you start to narrow down actual possibilities. And then go back through the little tips that I had and make sure it's fun to say, it's nice to say, it doesn't mean anything weird, and it conveys some kind of an essence. And I think that you will have landed on a great name. So thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe if this helped you at all. Share with friends, and I will see you guys really soon in my next video.